Hey y'all, we're back again today with a new kind of pocket Voltex design. For this particular design, kind of had a shitty name for it, but there it is. It's the Pocket SDVX Pico THT. THT meaning through hole, so all the resistors and LEDs are through hole. So yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a while. The internet's out currently, so figured this would be a better time than any to go ahead and do that. Talk about some of the design decisions I did for this particular controller. First of all, if you saw, actually you don't see on here, but underneath here, here's a Raspberry Pi Pico. So decided to go with this platform instead of what I used for Pocket SDVX, which is a Pro Micro. So it's no longer Arduino based. And the reason I did this is because I figured the Pi Pico, it's newer, it's pretty cool. And what's neat about it, aside from its technical capabilities, is that the Raspberry Pi Foundation has a good distribution worldwide. So you don't have to, wait for Pro Micros to be shipped from China to wherever you are. And Pro Micros right now, they're going for maybe $4 to $5 now instead of the 2 to 3 before COVID. So that actually makes this a little bit appealing because this is $4 no matter where you go, and you should be able to find it. I think they're pretty much in stock nowadays. And what's also cool about this is that you see it's the components are only on one side. So what you can do, here's a PCB for example. So we now have a PCB. Very nice. This is my first PCB. If you'll notice, some of these have some bodge wires because I may have swapped the pads. So oops, but that's been fixed in later revisions. But anyway, if you take a PCB and you see there's pads here, and what you can do is you can directly solder the Pi Pico onto this PCB, and it will already link up to the correct switches, and these ones are the resistors for the LEDs, which this does support. And yeah, pretty much you solder in your LEDs, your resistors, and the Pi Pico, and yeah, and that's how it all works. Uses the same similar style EC16 encoders, of course from boards, because shitty encoders are something to be aware of, and will give you hell when you're trying to play the game. All right, so the primary goal for this controller was to make it as cheap as possible and also very, very simple. For me, cheap, I have a 3D printer, right? So I've had a resin 3D printer for a while, so I've gone ahead and designed some keycaps for the resin printer, and they fit on almost as well as the injection molded stuff. I haven't finished printing out the start button. These will be printed out as well, but for now I'll put this here just as a placeholder. The knobs are also resin printed, and I tried to mimic some of the faceted features of the more premium knobs on this controller. It's not quite as nice, but you can see it a little bit if it'll focus. Yeah, and there's a hole for a grub screw. Some of these will have a hole that fits an M5 or M4, but I figure that it actually just press fits on like extremely well, and so I didn't bother putting any of those on, so it's another reduced cost there. As for the case, this is a one piece design. So what happens is that you print out the case, and then you solder on the small components, so the Pi Pico, the resistors. Depending on your switch type, you'll solder the LEDs first or you'll put it together, but basically you just slap this on, put in your switches, and then solder it in. And the switches, since they go through the whole thing, from top to bottom. They'll hold the PCB in place. So there's actually no, besides the nuts that come with the encoder, there's no screws or nuts to worry about. What else? Yeah, so as I said before, these are bodge wires. I think whenever I release the version on GitHub, these will just solder directly to the pads, so you don't need to do any of this jank wiring. So yeah, and then it's the same stick-on 4 rubber feet. And yeah, overall very simple, and it's actually it's actually quite rigid. It's so hard to flex because the PCB takes up so much of the body space. And yeah, there's no back cover, so it's a little pokey, but I've tried to make it so that the lip here, the PCB is like sit down a little bit further in, so that when you grab the sides or when you put it on a table, for example, these solder joints won't poke your table. Let me check what else. Oh yeah. So on Pocket SDVX, I used 2U keycaps for the FX, which I've kept the same. But for the buttons, these are 1.25U. Cami used 1.25, as well as Mon's more famous Pocket Voltex. And while they look good, I found that when I'm playing, since they're so flat in profile, well, not really flat, but they're like round at the edges and they're a little small. So when I'm playing, if you're offset a little bit, you can find your finger slipping off these a little bit easier than I'd like. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and actually just moved to 1.5U. So it's a little bigger, just marginally. And since these are flat, these actually have a much larger surface area that you're going to be touching. It's almost like 1/4 bigger. And I find that I perform a lot better with it. Another small design change I've done is that you can tell the spacing between the FX and the button is slightly wider, slightly taller. And this is actually, if you take a look at a regular keyboard here, your home row is like this, so your spacing would naturally fall into that. So this one should be the same spacing as a regular keyboard. So it's just like you're on the home row. And now for the elephant in the room, like why is there a big gaping hole here? And of course, as I said before, right? So this Pico, yeah, it's small, but it's not as small as an Arduino. And if you think about it, where am I going to put this? I guess like in the end I could have put it here, but it's super tight. The switch tolerance or the switch spacing may or may not have fit. Yeah, like that maybe not so much. But anyway, so what I've gone ahead and decided to do is that, sure, we can, well, this is not AC accurate, right? So we can pretty much do whatever we want with the start button. So we can put this here and we can route the micro USB cable through a channel up here. And originally I wasn't going to, make this a huge gaping hole. I was gonna have a cover, and then I realized just how thick some of these micro USB cables are. If you look here, there's not a lot of clearance for that. So I went ahead and just made the empty in it. Actually, it's quite easy. So since you have full access, just go ahead, you plug it in. And then down here, you just, you route your cable, and then there's a lot of clearance. So you can pretty much use any cable and you don't have to worry about, how big the casing is or how bulky it is. You just put the cable down. When you put it down, I haven't put rubber feet on this yet, but let's see. You can't quite see, but anyway. Yeah, and then it just comes out the top. And then when you're done, unplug, remove, and pack it up, take it wherever you want to go. And yeah, so since I talked about, the spacing, increased spacing here, you're like, oh man, this must be a lot bigger. And it, physically it does look bigger because of its rectangular size. But if we bring, Pocket SDVX back into the picture. We line it up. This one is a slightly wider version to match or to get these budge wires in. So you can expect it's actually not quite as large. So on this particular version, you have maybe a centimeter this way. In terms of height, it's like half a centimeter. So in reality, this gets brought in a little bit because the spacing here gets reduced. So it's only like maybe total dimensions, half a centimeter wider here and half a centimeter wider here. It just looks bigger because there's no cut angle here. Yes, it doesn't look as nice, but the bill of materials for this is much, much cheaper. And to be honest, I've been building a few keyboards here and there, and I had a bunch of spare parts. I had some spare encoders, so I had the straight version of this. And I decided that, I know some people don't have that much money right now, and they still want to play Voltex with, without a keyboard. I absolutely despise using keyboards as knobs. So this gives you some of that knob feeling and a similar play style, but at a much lower price. And I do have plans to bring a pricier, better looking version to the market, less jank, but this is the budget version, so that's what you get. More recent batches will have this kind of textured plastic finish. I had a printer where normally it's smooth on top, so if you get a smoother, how do I say it? It really depends on what printer I printed the case with, and I'll just send them out indiscriminately. But if you're watching this a few months from now, they're probably going to be all looking like this, and I quite like the texture, very nice. Yeah, that's it. It's been 12 minutes already, so I might as well close it out. That's the Pocket SDVX Pico, and ideally version 1.2.